Hello, and welcome to Keeping You Informed on Little Light TV. I just want to take a couple of moments and share my thoughts on the recent Supreme Court ruling on affirmative action. And the reason why, because I think it shows a failure to understand why affirmative action came about in the first place. So affirmative action, so contrary to popular belief, some people think that affirmative action will um, um, have unqualified applicants be accepted into Ivy League schools. But contrary to that myth, affirmative action does not admit unqualified students. As a matter of fact, it makes sure qualified students are not wrongly denied. And it also says you can't have an institution that is taking, taxpayer dollars of all people and utilizing these resources to perpetuate a social inequality caused by discrimination. That's what affirmative action is talking about. So affirmative action advocates, they don't argue that someone should automatically get in because they come from a disadvantaged background. But the argument is that a history of inequality or a history of disadvantages can be considered during admission decisions to give consideration to those who otherwise would have been overlooked in the first place. So I want you to think about how white people have benefited from affirmative action. So first and foremost, the Homestead Act. The Homestead Act, remember that act? It gave 70 million acres to white Americans. And it's estimated that 40 million white Americans benefited from it, and millions, even to this day, millions are still living on that property. And I also want you to think about the FHA home loan program, which gave over $100 billion of government-backed housing to white Americans. This essentially created the white middle class. So, groups who want to end affirmative action ignore a lot of recent studies. Some of these recent studies conclude that applicants with white sounding names have a 50% chance of getting a call back than those with a black sounding name, even when their qualifications are immense. Some of these groups continue to ignore the fact that 8 out of 10 jobs are filled by networking, which is a lot of times a process that, excludes people of color, and it elevates white people because they know the right people. And you know what? They don't think to consider how students from the top 1% of families by income are 77 times more likely to get into an Ivy League college than those from the bottom 20%. They overlook the way that students accumulate points to get into the Ivy League schools in the first place. I'm talking about legacy admission. So some institutions will give legacy admission in terms of points. So you can get points because you went to a top high school. So if you went to a top high school, that means that you lived in an affluent zip code. You can also get points for taking an advanced placement exam, which those schools that offer those type of exams are 3 times more available to schools who are serving white Americans. And you can also get points when your parents have also went to an Ivy League school. Now that's affirmative action too, right? And I wonder, did they even consider that some students get in because their parents write a check? That some students can get in because their parents made a phone call or pull some strings so that their child can get in there. So the Supreme Court made it illegal for race-based admission. They have a lot of power to do that, right? But why is it that they didn't make it illegal for racism to take place in the first place? They make it illegal, to have race-based admission, but it's not illegal to have economic racism. And there's a book titled The Color of Law. It talks about how economic-based racism created low-income communities that some of people of color live in right now. So the Supreme Court of the United States, I'm just so happy that they don't have the final word. I'm happy that there is a higher court, an eternal court, and God Almighty has the final word, right? And God has a way of taking an injustice and transforming it for our good. And so I think with that being said, that there are opportunities to strengthen our HBCUs. There are opportunities to strengthen our HSIs or our MSIs. And so I believe now that groups of people are going to start taking a closer look at this and start to strengthen these minority-based schools to make them stronger, right? So that students of color will have greater opportunities in this country. I'm Tawan. This has been keeping you informed on Little Light TV. I want you to remember to take care and just always keep in mind that weeping may endure for a moment, but joy is coming.